Hi everyone, Edward here from Voice Spot. I hope you all have a good day. A child kidnapper kidnapped children in a town. One day he kidnapped a boy and was locked in a soundproof basement. Then that boy starts receiving calls on a disconnected black phone from the killer's previous victims. Is that boy managed to escape from that child kidnapper? Let's find out in the movie called The Black Phone from 2021. If you are new to our channel, please subscribe for many interesting movies. The film begins with a baseball game against another school. A young man named Finney is an outstanding pitcher. Finney's crush and his younger sister, Gwen, watch him play against the opposing batter, Bruce, from the mini grandstand. Unfortunately, Finney's team loses despite Bruce's successful home run. After the game, Bruce compliments Finney on his excellent arm. Days have passed since the game when Bruce mysteriously vanishes from the neighborhood. He is the fourth boy to go missing in the community in recent months. Meanwhile, Finney and Gwen are raised by their alcoholic and volatile father. Following that, Finney and Gwen walk to school together, and on the way, they notice a recently plastered missing Bruce poster. Finney believes he is involved in the case of the missing children. Soon after, the two siblings are on their way to school when they hear their classmates escalating the bloody brawl between Finney's best friend, Robin, and the giant bully boy. Finney despises brutality and flees the crowd, dragging Gwen with him. Gwen mocks Finney for being a chicken, but Finney simply does not want violence because it is less work. Finney and Gwen arrive at school and go to class. Finney fidgets with his mini rocket flashlight inside the classroom. After spotting the three bullies waiting for him, Finney flees to the boys' restroom. They quickly corner him and order him to come out of the stall. Finney agrees to their request because hiding only serves to prolong the inevitable punches. Fortunately, Robin enters the restroom, and his presence, as well as his bloody knuckle, intimidates them. While cleaning his bleeding knuckles, Robin warns the three bullies not to mess with Finney any longer. Finally, Robin encourages Finney to learn to defend himself from bullies because they will not stop until he does. Finney agrees with him, but he finds it too violent. Robin then takes Finney's attention away from his bullies for a moment and asks if he can help him with mathematics again. Finney gladly accepts to assist him as a good friend. Meanwhile, two police detectives pay a visit to Gwen at school to discuss the missing children case. According to Bruce's younger sister, Bruce vanished after Gwen learned that the grabber had kidnapped him and then left black balloons at the crime scene. The two detectives are perplexed, wondering how Gwen knew about the black balloons in these when such evidence was never made public. Gwen has inherited her late mother's psychic ability, and she can see into the past and future. Gwen claims her dreams are real, but the two detectives find it difficult to believe her. Gwen spends the night at a friend's house after school, while Finney returns home to care for their father. Finney is distressed at home until he falls asleep while watching a horror movie. Finney awakens the next morning after hearing Gwen's shrill cry. Gwen is being physically punished by her father for telling the police about her dreams. When Gwen claims that her dreams are real, he becomes enraged and forces her to repeat to him, "My dreams aren't real," until she understands the lesson. The father receives bad news from the police that night. He looks at Finney and inquires about Robin. When the father mentions Robin's name, Finney realizes that the grabber has taken Robin. Gwen follows Finney to his room to console him, and he asks if she can use her psychic ability to locate Robin. Gwen is aware that willpower does not work in her dreams, but she wants to give it a shot. So Gwen goes to her room, sets up her little altar, and begs God to grant her dreams to aid in her search for Robin. It's Friday again, and the three bullies are hurting and ganging up on Finney now that Robin has gone missing. Gwen joins the fight to save Finney and knocks the first bully out. The second bully, however, quickly retaliates, flipping and slamming Gwen to the ground. Gwen is now retreating, while the two remaining bullies continue to boot Finney. Finney and Gwen go to class as if nothing happened that morning. Gwen and Finney split up again after school for their usual Friday schedule. Finney is driving home along his usual route when he notices a familiar black van. He then notices a suspicious man drop his box inadvertently. The suspicious man quickly notices Finney and invites him to watch his show, but Finney is credulously distracted by the black balloons inside the vehicle. He only then realizes the man in front of him is the grabber. Finney quickly chokeholds the grabber, but he cuts his arm with the pointy tip of his rocket flashlight. The grabber groans in pain, but he continues to choke Finney and spray pepper spray in his face. Finney awakens, his eyes stinging from the spray, but he forces himself to look at the grabber in front of him. The grabber assures Finney that nothing bad will happen, but Finney knows he is lying. Finney explores the basement after being isolated, where he discovers a toilet, carpets, and a broken rotary black phone near the bed. Meanwhile, Gwen and her father have filed a missing person report with the police after learning that Finney has not returned home. Gwen returns to her room and immediately prays to God for assistance in finding Finney. Finney is back in the basement when he hears the black phone ring. He answers it, but all he hears are static noises. The grabber appears unexpectedly from the doorway and informs him that the phone is broken. He tells Finney to hang up, but Finney refuses. The grabber is a little worried because his plan isn't working out. Finney then suggests releasing him because his plan has gone awry, but the grabber refuses due to his current situation. Finney then notices the grabber has a visitor upstairs. He wants to scream to alert the visitor upstairs, but the grabber says it's pointless because the basement is soundproofed once the door shuts. Finney then accuses the grabber of murder, but he denies it and blames it on someone else. The grabber attempts to approach Finney, but Finney warns him not to because he will scratch his face. The grabber obeys Finney, so he returns to the door and tells Finney to hang up the phone for the last time. When grabber mentions the black phone, he recalls a creepy memory. It had previously rung for him, but no one had answered when he picked it up. The grabber believes the broken phone rings due to static electricity, dissipating once picked up. The grabber returns upstairs, abandoning Finney. Finney screams for help, but no sound can be heard outside the basement. He eventually comes to a halt and looks around for a possible escape route. The room, however, is so secure that even the bed is bolted. Finney eventually falls asleep after devising his escape plan. The black phone's faint breathing sound, on the other hand, alerts him. When the grabber unexpectedly reappears inside the basement, he yells at the black phone to stop messing with his head. Finney expresses his hunger, but the grabber refuses to bring him food because of the visitor. Finney inquires why he's downstairs if he's not delivering food, and the grabber responds that he just wanted to check on him. The grabber exits the basement once more, and Finney returns to sleep. The black phone rang once more. When Finney answers, a low, dragging voice addresses him. Finney abruptly terminates the call because a broken phone cannot function. The phone continues to ring until Finney finally toughens up and answers the creepy phone. Finney is about to hang up when he hears a familiar voice. The voice can't recall his name, but he knows Finney's arm is pristine. Finney suddenly realizes that it should be Bruce speaking to him. Finney then inquires whether the phone rang for him as well, to which Bruce responds that it did, but there was no response. Bruce is overjoyed that Finney can hear him. Bruce initially dials to assist Finney in finding his way out. As a result, he instructs Finney to dig a dirt tunnel beneath the loose tile in the hallway. It turns out that when Bruce was locked in the basement, he tried to escape using this method but ran out of time. Meanwhile, Gwen fantasizes about Bruce's life from childhood to the day the grabber kidnaps him. She also notices her brother attempting to flee from a house with the address 1747. In her dream, she wakes up and searches the streets for a similar address. Back in the basement, Finney starts digging in the corridor, then flushes the dirt down the toilet to keep it from piling up. Later, he covers the hole with a carpet to keep the grabber from seeing it. The following day, school administrators gather their students in the gymnasium to show their support for Gwen's family, who are currently dealing with Finney's disappearance. Meanwhile, Finney receives his first breakfast, but he is unsure if it is safe to eat. The grabber guarantees it's clean because there's no point in drugging him if he's already in the basement. The grabber then goes upstairs as usual, but he forgets to lock the door. Finney assumes it's time to flee, but then the black phone rings. Finney answers the phone quickly and is greeted by a new voice who introduces himself as the boy who delivered newspapers. He is recognized by Finney as the missing paperboy. Finney is prevented from going upstairs by Paperboy because the unlocked door is a trap. He explains that grabber anticipates his victims escaping from the basement when they see the open door, so he waits upstairs with a belt in hand. When his victims reach the first floor, he grabs them and hits them until they pass out. Unfortunately, Paperboy had previously fallen into his trap and was in excruciating pain until he collapsed. Now he warns Finney not to flee in order to avoid the same fate he did. With this information, Finney decides to stay in the basement and eat only the breakfast that has been prepared for him. Meanwhile, Gwen is sleeping in the school clinic after staying up late last night worrying about her brother. She then has a dream about the paperboy delivering newspapers in the neighborhood with his dog. However, the grabber quickly abducts him, leaving his dog and bike on the street. Back in the basement, Paperboy tells Finney about his escape rope hidden behind a wall. Finney retrieves the rope from its hiding place, then guides it up into the steel bars that cover the basement window with a furled carpet. He then wraps the rope around a bar, ties a knot at the ends to form a step, and climbs over the knot to reach the windowsill. Due to his heavy weight, he falls along with the steel bar. Gwen, on the other hand, talks to her father about the visions she sees in her dreams. She wishes to contribute to the investigation, but her father reminds her that their mother committed suicide because she couldn't bear seeing any more visions. He only wants Gwen to avoid becoming like her mother, but Gwen is determined to use her abilities for good. The father eventually caves, and the police are called to investigate the creepy house depicted in Gwen's dream. Later, the two detectives arrive at the aforementioned house. A man named Max opens the door and recognizes them as the police officers investigating the missing children case. Max shows them his detailed map and deduces where the missing children could be hiding. The search for Finney comes to a halt, but they encourage Max to assist the police in any way he can. Then they tell him to call the cops if he finds a new lead before leaving the house. The visitor who has been agitating the grabber for the past few days has been revealed to be none other than Max, the grabber's brother. Grabber's plan to satisfy his masochistic and sadistic persona was thwarted by Max's presence in the house. Unfortunately, Max is unable to determine that his brother is the murderer, despite the fact that the missing child is right under his nose. Meanwhile, Finney completes the tunnel in the hallway. The grabber pays Finney a visit with breakfast in hand and immediately asks for his identity. Because the cops came to his house earlier, the grabber's situation has become more complicated and tangled. He's considering releasing Finney, but first he wants his name in exchange for his freedom. Finney, on the other hand, lies and gives him a different name. The grabber already knows Finney's true name thanks to the daily newspapers, and he's just trying to test Finney's honesty. The grabber, disappointed, throws Finney's food on the floor and declares that he would have released him if he had told the truth. The grabber then returns upstairs, leaving the door unlocked once more. The grabber, on the other hand, hasn't slept since Finney's kidnapping because Finney hasn't escaped the basement in the way he expects him to. Back in the basement, Finney encounters a new voice and recognizes him as Griffin, another missing child. Griffin instructs Finney to flee immediately because the grabber is sleeping. The front door, however, is secured with a lock. Griffin, fortunately, used to own the lock and told Finney where he carved the combination on the wall. Finney discovers the code not long after. Finney sneaks to the front door as quietly as possible and tries 3 different combinations of the combination code. He finally opens the lock after failing twice, but the messy dog hiding behind a closet barks, waking the grabber from his deep sleep. When he realizes Finney has escaped, he drives his black van down the street to pursue him. Finney screams for help, but the grabber grabs him just as the neighbor's porch lights up. The grabber thrusts his blade into Finney's neck, warning him not to scream or he will kill him instantly. Finney is escorted back to the basement. Gwen has a dream the next day about another missing boy, Vance, beating up an innocent guy after messing up his pinball game. The cops arrest him and place him in the police car. Gwen appears out of nowhere and walks through her dream. She gets into the car and sits next to Vance. Then Gwen overhears Finney talking to Vance on the car radio. Vance then pulls over in front of a house with the address 7741. The words Gwen heard in her dreams were actually spoken by Finney and Vance in the basement. Vance calls Finney to inform him of the adjacent storage room near the bathroom. However, despite his efforts to open the wall and pass through the freezer, Finney is unable to exit because the grabber has locked the freezer from the outside. Finney collapses and sobs in the corner, having given up hope of escaping. Fortunately, this time Robin calls Finney to encourage him to fight and live longer than him. So he shows Finney how to effectively punch the grabber and instructs him to fill the phone's receiver with dirt to turn it into a weapon. Meanwhile, Gwen reports the house she saw in her dream to the police. The police arrive at the address quickly to investigate the house property. They discover nothing until they reach the basement, where they discover 5 graves and 1 empty grave, which has been purposefully created for Finney. Max, on the other hand, finally finds Finney in his brother's basement. Unfortunately, he is killed with an axe by the grabber. The grabber has the appearance of a serial killer, but Finney is ready for him. The grabber summons his sloppy dog and ties him near the front door. It's showtime, and Finney outwits the grabber with the help of the 5 ghosts. The grabber swings his axe at Finney, but he easily avoids him by leaping across the hidden tunnel in the hallway. The grabber rushes after him, but Finney yanks on the cord, tripping the grabber. The grabber falls and breaks his ankle on the foundation's steel bars. Now that the grabber is trapped, Finney furiously pitches punches at him with the receiver until his mask is removed. When the grabber loses his mask, he panics, and Finney takes advantage of the situation by strangling him with the phone cord. This time, the black phone rings for the grabber, and each of the 5 ghosts mocks the grabber just before Finney finally snaps his neck. Finney escapes the basement safely by distracting the messy dog with a piece of meat from the freezer. Then he uses the combination code to unlock the front door lock. Gwen rushes to her brother as he exits the grabber's house and embraces him. The cops then secure both of the grabber's homes for further investigation. Following that, the father arrives at the property and reconciles with his children. After a few days, Finney returns to school, confident in his ability to survive an abduction and kill the grabber. I hope you all enjoy the movie. Please comment about what about this video. This will help me to improve my video quality. Thank you.